The moon hung low over the silver towers of Elaris, a kingdom where wolves walked as men, and the blood of the moon herself flowed through royal veins. The night air shimmered with cold light, bathing the citadel in a beauty too perfect to be real, like a dream balanced on the edge of a nightmare. For generations, the lichened court had claimed to be blessed by the moon goddess, but every blessing from heaven carries its shadow. The old songs whispered that Elaris was also cursed. One ruler in every age would be tested by love so powerful it could unmake him. Tonight, that prophecy stirred to life. Inside the highest tower of the palace, behind doors sealed by runes and guarded by silence, Serena, a trembling Omega healer, knelt upon the marble floor. Her robe, once white, was torn and smeared with blood. In her hand she clutched a folded piece of cloth so fiercely that her knuckles blanched. The torches lining the chamber hissed and guttered. Firelight wavered over her pale face, turning her tears into thin rivers of gold. Each breath came sharp and shallow, as if the air itself resisted entering her lungs. Across from her, upon the dais of the throne, stood King Adrian of Elaris, the Alpha King, ruler of 10 provinces, conqueror of a dozen wars. He was not accustomed to hesitation, yet the sight before him made even his heart stumble. He had seen fear before, on battlefields, in the eyes of traitors, but never like this. The woman before him wasn't merely frightened, she was pleading with fate itself. "Why are you hiding that?" he asked at last. His voice filled the chamber, deep and measured, carrying the weight of command. Serena lifted her head, tears shimmering in her lashes. "Please," she whispered, "please don't take the cloth off." The sound of her voice, hoarse, desperate, cut through the air like a wound. Adrian descended the steps one by one, each footfall echoing against the cold marble. His cloak trailed behind him like a shadow that wanted to swallow her whole. "You disobeyed my order," he said evenly. "You entered the sealed chamber beneath the temple. You brought out an artifact that even my priests fear to name." He stopped a few feet away. The torches flared as if reacting to the tension between them. "Now you kneel before your king, trembling, clutching that thing as though it were life itself. Tell me, Serena, why?" Her mouth opened, but the words came out in fragments. "Because what lies beneath it will destroy you." For the briefest moment, something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Not anger, not pride, but a trace of concern. It vanished quickly, buried under years of discipline. "I've ruled over beasts and betrayals," he said, his tone hardening. "There is nothing left in this world that can destroy me." Serena's grip tightened around the cloth until blood welled where her nails broke the skin. "You're wrong," she said softly. "Some truths were never meant for kings." The room fell silent. Only the wind whispered through the stained glass windows, carrying with it the distant howls of the palace wolves. Even the flames seemed to lean away, shrinking as though they too feared what would come next. Adrian took another step. "You would defy me still?" Her shoulders shook. "I would protect you, even from yourself." He frowned. No Omega had ever spoken to him that way, without arrogance, yet without submission. "Protect me? From what?" "From the goddess's judgment," she breathed. "From love's curse." The word sent a chill through him. The priests had murmured of a curse once tied to the moon's relic, a seal that bound power too ancient to name. He had dismissed it as superstition, yet here it was, trembling in her hands. He reached out. "Give it to me." Serena's entire body recoiled. "No, please, my king. I beg you, don't." Adrian hesitated. Her fear was raw, real, and yet curiosity, that fatal flaw of every ruler, burned stronger. He had never turned away from the unknown. Knowledge was power, and power kept his kingdom safe. He closed the distance between them. His hand hovered above hers. "If this thing holds danger, I will face it. That is my duty." Her eyes filled with tears. "And if it holds destiny, will you face that too?" He almost smiled, but the pain in her voice stopped him. "Serena," he said softly, "I do not fear destiny." She bowed her head, whispering one last plea. "Then may the goddess have mercy on you." His fingers brushed the edge of the cloth. The air changed. The flames flickered red, shadows twisting along the walls like living things. The marble beneath them pulsed faintly, as though something ancient stirred beneath the palace foundations. Adrian felt it, a surge of warmth, then cold, rushing through his veins. Still, he did not stop. Slowly, inexorably, he lifted the fabric. The world seemed to hold its breath. Serena's cry broke the silence. "No." But it was too late. The moment the last corner of the cloth fell away, light exploded outward. White and scarlet, brilliant and blinding. The torches guttered out, leaving only the glow that poured from the thing beneath. Adrian froze. His hand trembled mid-air. His breath caught as his eyes widened in horror. What he saw defied reason, defied faith, defied every law the moon goddess herself had written into flesh. Serena collapsed to her knees, covering her face. "I begged you not to." The sound of her sobs echoed through the vast chamber. The light dimmed, retreating slowly until only moonbeams remained. When the glow finally died, the great hall stood silent. Dust drifted through the air like falling stars. Adrian stood unmoving, his golden eyes still fixed on what he had unveiled. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. The wind screamed through the stained glass, carrying away her broken whisper. "Please, don't take the cloth off." And in that instant, the heartbeat between knowledge and ruin, the prophecy of Elaris began to fulfill itself. Long before that terrible night in the throne room, Serena had lived quietly at the edge of the royal citadel, a place where the sun always seemed dimmer and the wind carried the scent of obedience. She was a healer's apprentice, an Omega by birth and by burden. In Elaris, Omegas were expected to heal, to serve, to bend their necks when Alphas passed. Yet Serena, small and slight with a voice that trembled when she prayed, believed that kindness could still matter in a kingdom ruled by dominance. Every dawn she rose before the first horn of the watchtower and wrapped herself in a shawl patched more times than she could count. The gardens outside the healer's quarters waited for her, mist curling low over the beds of fever grass, dew gathering like tears on the petals of silver root. She carried a wicker basket and a short knife, whispering to the plants as she cut them, thanking them for their strength. Beyond the garden walls, the training yard thundered with the growls of shifting wolves and the clatter of steel. She had learned to move in rhythm with that sound. Snip, flinch, breathe, snip, flinch, breathe. Fear was a companion now, unwelcome but familiar. It kept her careful, kept her alive. That morning, while the mist still clung to the stones, something new caught her eye. A trail of crimson droplets, stark against the pale cobblestone. Blood. Her pulse quickened. Injured soldiers sometimes stumbled from the yard to seek the healers, but this trail led away from the barracks, toward the outer wall where the ivy grew thick and wild. She hesitated only a moment before following it, basket forgotten against her hip. The smell reached her first. Iron and rain and fur. There, half hidden in the grove's shadows, lay a wolf, larger than any she had ever seen. Its silver coat was matted with blood, one flank torn open. Each breath was a shallow, painful rasp. Serena dropped to her knees. "Oh, goddess of mercy," she whispered. "Who hurt you?" The wolf's golden eyes snapped open. They blazed with dominance, fierce and intelligent. For one terrifying heartbeat, she thought it would lunge, tear, devour. Instead, the great head lowered until its muzzle brushed the earth, a silent surrender. Her healer's instincts overruled her fear. She tore strips from her apron, poured the water from her satchel, and began to clean the wound. Her fingers shook, but her voice stayed steady. "You'll live," she murmured, pressing the cloth firmly against the gash. "Just don't move." The wolf gave a low growl, not a warning, but a sound of confusion, almost disbelief. Few Omegas dared to touch an Alpha's kind, let alone speak to one as an equal. When she finished binding the wound, the beast's eyes fluttered closed. Serena reached for her herbs to seal the dressing, and froze as the wolf's form began to change. Bone cracked. Fur receded. Muscles twisted beneath skin that shimmered with residual magic. The shape before her shrank and reformed until a man knelt where the wolf had lain. A man with broad shoulders, a scar slicing across his ribs, and the unmistakable air of command. Serena gasped, stumbling backward until her palms hit the wet grass. "Your Majesty." King Adrian of Elaris, ruler of the Lichen realms, lifted his head slowly. His breath came ragged, but his golden eyes, those same eyes, fixed on hers with startled clarity. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice rough as gravel. "I was only trying to help," she answered, still kneeling. Her heart hammered in her throat. He studied her as though trying to place her in the grand puzzle of his kingdom. "You're not afraid?" "Of you," she whispered. "Should I be?" Something subtle shifted in his expression, a flicker of surprise, maybe amusement, maybe respect. Most Omegas would be trembling. "I am trembling," she admitted, and indeed her hands shook where they rested on her skirt. "But that doesn't mean I'll run." A pause stretched between them. Then unexpectedly he smiled, a faint curve of lips that seemed to soften the entire world around them. "No," he said quietly. "You're not like the others." The sound of his voice lingered even after he rose and disappeared back into the forest shadows. Serena sat there long after he was gone, staring at the blood-stained cloth in her hands. Something inside her chest, something long dormant, stirred awake. Life in the healer's quarters returned to routine, yet nothing felt the same. Each time she washed the floor or sorted herbs, she found herself glancing toward the garden gate. At night, she dreamed of golden eyes and the scent of rain on fur, and then he returned. The first time he came limping under a cloak, his arm wrapped tight. "You left the stitches too neat," he said with a half-smile. "My men are suspicious." She cleaned and rebandaged the wound without meeting his gaze, pretending not to notice the way his presence filled the small room like a storm barely contained. After that night he came again. And again. Always after dark, always cloaked, always with some excuse. A reopened wound, a new scar, a phantom pain. But soon there were nights when he arrived uninjured, asking only for tea, for conversation, for the quiet sound of her voice. Serena told herself it was duty, not desire, that kept her waiting for him. Yet when the sound of boots echoed outside, her heart always skipped a beat. They spoke of small things at first, the herbs that eased a fever, the moons that governed the tides. But as the nights passed, the conversations deepened. He asked her about the healer's creed, about the goddess who ruled over life and death. Serena would laugh softly and say, "The goddess blesses only those who love with truth." Adrian would look into the flame of her oil lamp and murmur, "Then I am already cursed." She never asked what he meant, but she saw it, the shadow that lived behind his eyes, the loneliness that no crown could fill. Weeks melted into months. Rumors began to slither through the palace, of a king who vanished into the lower quarters after midnight, of an unseen woman who smelled of herbs and moonlight. Serena tried to end their meetings, fearful of what discovery would mean. An Omega caught consorting with the king could vanish without a trace. But each time she steeled herself, he would arrive at her door, weary from battle or burdened by rule, and all her resolve would crumble. They developed a ritual. He would knock twice, softly. She would open the door without a word. He would sit by the small fire, remove his gloves, and let the silence wrap around them like a cloak. Sometimes she read to him from the old healer texts. Sometimes he simply listened to her hum while she mixed tonics. In those moments, he was not a king, and she was not an Omega. They were simply two souls who had found a rare peace in each other's company. But peace in Elaris was never meant to last. One evening, rain lashed against the roof of the healer's hut. The fire hissed and sputtered, casting fleeting light over Adrian's face. He sat on the stool by the hearth, a bandage unwrapped around his hand. Serena worked silently, trimming the gauze. He broke the quiet first. "Tell me your secret, Serena." She glanced up, startled. "My secret?" "Yes." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You hide your thoughts as skillfully as you hide that cloth at your waist. What is it?" Her eyes dropped to the folded fabric tucked beneath her belt. It was small, no larger than a handkerchief, yet its presence seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "It's nothing," she said too quickly. Adrian's voice softened. "You speak of truth as though it's sacred. Why hide yours?" The room filled with the steady rhythm of rain. She turned toward the window, watching rivulets trace the glass. "It's a reminder," she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper, "of what love can take and what it can never give back." He frowned, not understanding. "Someone hurt you?" "Not someone." She touched the cloth gently. "Something. A promise broken before I was even born." He reached out, his calloused fingers brushing hers. The warmth of his skin sent a shiver through her. "Then let me keep whatever promise they broke." She looked up, meeting his gaze, and for the first time allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like to be loved without fear. But the thought frightened her more than any punishment the palace could deliver. She pulled her hand away. "You shouldn't say such things, Your Majesty." "I'm not your king here," he said quietly. "Not tonight." She didn't answer. The fire crackled between them, each spark another heartbeat they dared not claim. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, two souls sat inches apart, each silently begging the other to speak what neither could say aloud. When the storm finally eased, Adrian rose to leave. He hesitated at the doorway. "Serena, whatever that cloth is, promise me one thing. Don't let it steal your happiness." She smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "Happiness is not stolen, my king. It's borrowed. And someday, the debt must be paid." He wanted to ask what she meant, but she turned away to tend the dying fire. So he left, taking her words, and the echo of her heartbeat, with him into the rain-washed night. Long after he was gone, Serena sat alone in the quiet hut, the rain's whisper fading into the distance. She unfolded the cloth and stared at the faint silver sigil stitched into its center, a crescent intertwined with a tear-shaped rune. It pulsed faintly beneath her fingertips. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "When the goddess weaves love into your path, child, remember, it is a thread made of fire. It warms, but it also burns." Serena closed her eyes. "Then let me burn quietly," she whispered. She folded the cloth again, tighter this time, as though trying to lock the past away. But even she could feel it, the invisible string that now bound her heart to the king's. Every beat drew them closer to the moment neither could escape. Beyond the walls, the wolves howled beneath the rising moon. In the royal tower, Adrian stood at his window, the wind tugging at his cloak. He touched the faint scar on his arm, the mark of her first healing, and smiled to himself. Far below, in the healer's hut, Serena pressed the cloth to her lips and whispered a prayer she could never speak aloud. "Moon goddess, guard him from the truth. Let him live in light, even if I must remain in shadow." The same moon watched them both. One king bound by curiosity, one healer bound by destiny, its silver glow weaving their fates ever tighter. And somewhere between the pulse of their hearts and the whisper of the wind, the goddess sighed, knowing that love had already begun to write its own curse. The days that followed were quieter, but peace was a fragile thing in the palace of Elaris, like frost on a blade. glittering for a heartbeat before it melted away. Rumors began to coil through the marble corridors, thin and poisonous as smoke from a dying fire. Servants whispered while polishing silver. Guards murmured at the gate when they thought no one could hear. They spoke of the Alpha King's midnight wanderings, of the faint scent of crushed herbs that lingered on his cloak, of the softness that had crept into a voice once sharp enough to command armies. An Alpha King was expected to mate for alliance, not affection, to build power, not to share it. Compassion was weakness, and weakness was death. Yet lately the King of Elaris seemed human. He lingered in the gardens after council meetings, staring at the moon as if waiting for it to answer unspoken questions. He no longer joined the nightly hunts. He dismissed courtiers with a single distracted wave, then vanished for hours. Even the wolves felt the change. They howled less often, their songs turning mournful. In the healer's wing, Serena tried to pretend she heard nothing. She kept her head bowed, her hands steady, her heart silent. Her work was simple, safe, predictable. Grind the roots, dry the petals, stir the tonics clockwise 7 times. But silence has a pulse, and rumor is louder than any war drum when it beats close to home. She felt the stares of the other healers, the questions behind their polite smiles. When they spoke her name, they lowered their voices, but never enough. By the 3rd day, the gossip had grown bold enough to walk through her door. She was bent over a mortar grinding fever root into paste when a shadow darkened the threshold. "Still working, little Omega?" came a silken voice. Serena didn't need to look up to know Lady Mirren stood there. The noblewoman's scent, honey and venom, announced her before her jeweled slippers ever touched the floor. "I hear our noble king has found comfort among the lowborn," Myron said, each word dripping with sweetness that cut deeper than steel. Serena kept her gaze on the pestle. "I serve whoever needs healing, my lady." Myron's laughter chimed like glass about to shatter. She moved closer until the sharp bite of her perfume filled the room. "And do you also serve them your heart?" The pestle halted mid-grind. Serena's fingers tightened around it until the wood creaked. "You speak dangerously, Lady Mirren." "Danger?" Myron tilted her head. "No, dear. I speak truth. You're a pretty little thing with gentle eyes. That alone is a threat in this palace. Beauty draws hunger. Kindness invites jealousy. Both are fatal." For a moment their gazes met, one filled with quiet endurance, the other with practiced cruelty. Then Mirren smiled, satisfied with the wound she'd opened. Her heels clicked away down the corridor, the sound echoing like a clock counting down to something inevitable. That night, Serena lay awake in her narrow cot. The dormitory around her was dark and silent. Even the candle at the shrine of the moon goddess had burned to a stub. On the small table beside her rested the folded cloth. Her secret, her curse. Its edges shimmered faintly whenever moonlight touched it, as though it breathed. She reached out and traced the threads, whispering, "Moon goddess, please protect him. Let him forget me if it keeps him safe." Her words vanished into the night without answer. Outside, clouds drifted over the moon, and the light in the room dimmed until only the faint glow from the cloth remained. At dawn, far across the palace, Elder Kale, the royal seer, climbed the spiral stairs to the king's private chamber. His white robes trailed behind him like mist. The guards hesitated to bar his way. The old man carried an authority older than crowns. He entered without announcement. Adrian stood at the window, gazing out over the waking city. "My king," Kale said, his tone low but urgent, "the moon has shown me a vision." Adrian turned, golden eyes sharp. "Another dream, Elder?" Kale stepped closer until the torchlight caught the silver tattoos that marked him as the moon's chosen. "Not a dream. A warning. The one you love hides a curse beneath a cloth. If you reveal it, blood will bind you both, but only one heart will survive the binding." Silence stretched. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Visions can be misread. I will not condemn someone on the shadow of a dream." Kale's old eyes darkened. "Dreams are the goddess's whispers, Ignore them and she will make you listen another way. Adrian turned back to the window. I have fought wars, Elder. I have seen men die for faith, for greed, for prophecy. I will not let superstition rule my heart. The seer bowed slightly. Then let it at least temper your curiosity. He paused at the doorway. Kings are not destroyed by enemies, my lord. They are destroyed by the truths they insist on uncovering. When Kale left, the king stood alone, watching the moon sink behind the mountains. He wanted to believe in love, not omens, but the memory of Serena's trembling hands and her desperate plea would not leave him. That evening, unable to bear the walls closing around him, Adrian saddled his horse and rode out beneath the silver light of the rising moon. The palace fell away behind him. The city streets gave way to the quiet paths of the healer's gardens. He found her there, kneeling among rows of moonbloom and fevergrass, her hands deep in the soil. The night wind played with a strand of her hair, catching the faint scent of rosemary and rain. Serena, he said softly. She startled, turning quickly. My king, you shouldn't be here. I needed to see you. He dismounted, leaving his cloak trailing in the dew. They say you hide something from me. Her heartbeat stumbled. Who told you that? He took a slow step closer. Does it matter? Tell me the truth. What is that cloth you carry? The world seemed to hold still. The night insects hushed. Even the breeze paused in the branches. Finally, she lowered her gaze, voice breaking. It's a seal the goddess gave me at birth. If I uncover it, someone I love will die. He moved closer until the distance between them was filled with nothing but shared breath. You mean me? Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know who it will claim, only that it will take what my heart treasures most. Adrian reached out, fingers trembling, and cupped her face. Then let it take me, if that is the price of loving you. She shook her head fiercely, pressing his hand away. Don't say that. You don't understand what you're offering. He smiled, a quiet, aching smile. You saved my life once, Serena. Maybe one day I'll return the favor. She wanted to speak, to tell him love was not salvation but sacrifice, yet the words stuck in her throat. The moon rose higher, washing them both in pale light. Somewhere above, a cloud drifted across the sky, dimming the glow. For a heartbeat, the world existed only in shades of silver and sorrow. Then he leaned forward, and she felt the warmth of his breath against her hair. Whatever curse you carry, he murmured, I will not fear it. I have faced death. What I cannot face is losing you. Her tears fell silently. Then pray you never must. When he finally left, the garden remained silent except for the soft rustle of leaves. Serena stood alone, hands clasped around the cloth hidden beneath her apron. High above, the full moon slid out from behind the cloud. Its light spilled across the garden, turning every droplet of dew into silver fire. For an instant, she thought she saw a figure reflected in the pool, a woman robed in starlight watching from the heavens with eyes full of sorrow. The moon goddess whispered through the wind, her voice as faint as memory. Every wish born beneath my light comes with a cost. Serena bowed her head, tears falling into the soil. Then let the cost be mine alone. The moon answered with silence. And far away in his tower, the Alpha King dreamt of her touch, while a single drop of blood formed beneath the ancient runes that sealed the throne room door. The prophecy was stirring. Fate was already counting down. The moon had never glowed so red. Even the stars seemed to retreat before its light, dimmed by the ominous glow that bathed the kingdom of Elaris in crimson fire. From the highest silver spires of the palace to the densest mist-filled forests beyond its walls, every creature of the night, every wolf, owl, and whispered shadow, lifted its head to watch. The blood moon had risen again, a celestial omen whispered about in ancient texts and feared by every generation that followed. It had not graced the sky for more than 100 years. not since the last time a king's heart had been tested by the moon goddess herself. And now, that same blood-red light poured over the palace, shimmering like liquid flame across its marble walls. Inside, the court was alive with feverish anticipation. Servants rushed through the grand halls carrying trays of silver lamps and bowls filled with blessed oil. The scent of burning sage and myrrh mingled with the chill air, while priests in white robes chanted invocations that echoed down the endless corridors. Tonight was no ordinary celebration. It was the ceremony of lunar allegiance, a sacred night when the Alpha King renewed his vow to the moon goddess, to lead with strength, to rule without deceit, to keep the balance between love and power. Candles floated in shallow pools of water, their flames trembling like souls uncertain of judgment. Drums beat steadily in the distance, a pulse that seemed to synchronize with the heartbeat of the realm itself. Yet beneath all that noise, unease lingered. The blood moon had always been an omen of revelation, a night when hidden truths clawed their way to the surface, whether invited or not. Far from the grand hall, in a quiet corner of the palace where the walls still smelled of herbs and rain, Serena knelt before a small altar she had built in secret. A simple wooden table, draped in white cloth, held three things: a bowl of water from the moonwell, a sprig of healing fern in the folded cloth, the same one that pulsed faintly now under the red light streaming through her window. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Faded threads shimmered faintly, reflecting the blood moon's glow. Beneath the weave, a heartbeat thrummed, slow, steady, alive. "Moon goddess," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I've kept it hidden as you commanded. Please, don't let him see." The pulse quickened. A faint warmth spread through her palms, seeping into her skin. The blood moon's energy was calling to it, awakening what she had long buried. She felt it rising, an ancient power, half divine and half cursed, stretching awake inside her. Her breath hitched. "Please," she gasped, "not tonight." But the moon does not answer prayers. It answers truths. At that same hour, in the grand ceremonial hall, King Adrian stood before his court. The weight of his crown pressed harder than usual, its golden arcs gleaming like fire in the blood moon's reflection. Around him, nobles in embroidered robes bowed low. Drums rolled, banners fluttered, and the priests of the moon chanted their hymns of loyalty. Yet Adrian barely heard them. His gaze was distant, fixed not on his throne, but on a memory, of a trembling healer kneeling beside a wounded wolf, of hands gentle enough to calm a king, of eyes that looked at him without fear. The priest's voice rang through the chamber, solemn and unyielding. Under the blood moon, the Alpha's heart must be pure of deceit. Any secret held close will be revealed before dawn. The words struck him like a blade sliding between ribs. He inhaled sharply, chest tightening. Secrets. The word echoed in his mind like a tolling bell. His gaze drifted to the far end of the hall, where Serena had been summoned to assist the royal healer during the ceremony. She stood half in shadow, her head bowed, her hands clenched around her satchel. The red light from the moon cast a ghostly hue across her pale skin. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met. It was only an instant, barely long enough to breathe, but it felt like an eternity. In that glance, 100 unspoken words passed between them. Fear, longing, guilt, and love, too forbidden to name. Then the drums silenced. The torches dimmed until only the glow of the moon lit the hall. The chants faded, leaving a hush so deep that every heart could hear its own guilt. And then, from the air itself, a voice emerged. Soft as wind, sharp as destiny, the moon goddess spoke. The one who hides love beneath a cloth. Tonight, the truth shall bleed. The words shivered through every living soul in the chamber. The nobles gasped. Some fell to their knees. Others crossed their hearts in fear. A cold wind burst through the hall, scattering petals and extinguishing candles. The scent of blood and thunder filled the air. Serena staggered backward, clutching her chest. The satchel at her waist quivered, light spilling from its seams. The old cloth within began to glow, pale at first, then violently bright, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "No," she whispered, panic seizing her voice. "Please, not now." Adrian was already moving. He pushed through the stunned crowd, ignoring their cries of, "My king!" and "Stay back!" "Serena!" he called, his voice echoing across the marble. "What's happening to you?" She fell to her knees, gasping. "It's the curse, the moon calls to it, I can't stop it." "Then let me," he said fiercely, kneeling beside her. His hands gripped her shoulders, grounding her trembling body. "Tell me what to do." Her eyes filled with tears, glowing faintly silver under the red moonlight. "You can't. If you touch it, the cloth will choose. It will decide between us." He stared at her, unflinching. "I would rather face death than watch you suffer." The glow intensified, flooding the hall in waves of scarlet and silver. Nobles screamed and fled. Guards stumbled as their armor burned cold against their skin. Yet the king did not move. He reached for her trembling hands, his own shaking not from fear but from the certainty of what he was about to do. "Serena," he whispered, "whatever fate awaits us, we face it together." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Then promise me this. If the goddess takes me, don't let them curse my name." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, voice breaking. "No one will curse you, my love. You'll be remembered as the light that saved me." The blood moon pulsed harder, each flash brighter, faster, angrier. The floor trembled, the great windows shattered outward. The banners of the royal house caught fire and fell like flaming wings. Serena screamed as the satchel burst open. The cloth unfolded itself, rising into the air, glowing with symbols that no living tongue could read. Adrian pulled her into his arms, shielding her from the wind. The light engulfed them both, burning, binding, blinding. The courtiers who dared to look said later that they saw the shapes of two wolves, one silver, one gold, entwined in the storm, circling until they vanished into the light. When the light finally dimmed, silence fell over the ruined hall. Candles sputtered in their pools, their flames reduced to trembling pinpricks. The scent of ozone hung thick in the air. Serena lay limp in the king's arms. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath his fingers. The glow of the cloth had faded, but a faint mark, crescent in flame, now burned at the center of her chest. "Serena," he whispered, shaking her gently. "Wake up. Please." She didn't move. He pressed his forehead against hers, his voice cracking. "I won't let it take you, not now, not ever." The healers rushed in, drawn by the noise. The high priest stumbled forward, horror twisting his face as he saw the mark on the Omega's skin. "My king, she has been chosen by the blood moon. That power is forbidden." "Then damn your laws," Adrian snarled. "Save her." But as the healers worked, Serena's breathing slowed. Her body grew still. The mark on her chest pulsed once, twice, and then faded into nothing. A strange, cold energy filled the hall, settling over the king like a second skin. He could feel it sinking into him, threading through his veins, binding him to her in ways he could not yet understand. He clutched her closer, his tears falling silently onto her pale face. The blood moon outside flickered, its light dimming as dawn began to creep over the horizon. Far above the trembling palace, in the silent expanse of the heavens, the moon goddess watched through the veil of cloud. Her voice carried on the cold wind that swept over the towers and into the hearts of all who still listened. The Alpha has touched what was forbidden. The cloth has chosen its master, and the price of love has been set. In the healers' quarters, every candle blew out at once. In the forest, the wolves raised their heads and howled in unison. And in the throne room below, the Alpha King held his fallen love beneath the dying glow of the blood moon, unaware that the curse had only just begun. 3 nights had passed since the blood moon, and still the crimson shadow lingered over Elaris. The kingdom, though outwardly calm, breathed in whispers. Every corridor of the palace carried fragments of the same story: the impossible light that had filled the great hall, the king's desperate cry, the healer's fall. No one dared to speak too loudly, yet the tale lived on every tongue. They called it the night the goddess touched the king. The royal court had returned to routine, but beneath the surface lay unease. Servants crossed themselves when they passed the infirmary. Guards at the gate swore they heard the faint sound of a woman's weeping carried on the wind. Even the wolves refused to patrol the east tower after sunset. The royal advisors begged for audience after audience. They spoke of politics, alliances, and scandal. They warned that the people feared witchcraft and demanded answers. But King Adrian of Elaris did not listen. He had locked himself away in the royal infirmary, where Serena lay still as moonlight upon a bed of white silk. Her skin had grown pale, translucent, kissed by frost yet somehow still warm to his touch. Beneath her collarbone, faintly visible, pulsed the mark, a crescent of light that rose and fell in time with his heartbeat. The healers had done all they could. They burned incense, spoke prayers, poured blessed waters over her lips, but nothing roused her. She slept as though bound in a dream too deep for mortal hands to reach. Adrian had not left her side since that night. When the advisors pleaded for his return to council, he dismissed them. When the priests accused him of defying divine order by keeping a cursed woman within sacred walls, he commanded them to leave or face exile. He had faced armies without fear, but this silence, her silence, was a war he could not win. He sat beside her bed in the dim glow of candlelight, his cloak discarded, his crown resting untouched upon a nearby chair. The chamber was filled with the soft rhythm of her shallow breaths and the distant cry of wolves outside the window. Each time he looked at her, his chest tightened until he could hardly breathe. The connection between them pulsed stronger with each hour, invisible but undeniable. When her heart fluttered weakly, his did too. When she stilled, his breath faltered. The curse had linked them, that much he understood, but not how, nor why. His gaze drifted to the table beside her, where the cloth lay folded neatly. It looked harmless now, just fabric, faintly glowing under the candlelight, but he could feel its pull, quiet and constant, whispering to him from the shadows. He reached out, then stopped. He could still hear her voice echoing from that night. "Please, don't take the cloth off." He clenched his fists, trembling with the memory. "You wanted to protect me," he whispered, "but now I can't protect you." As dawn crept pale and cold through the tall window, Elder Kale entered the chamber. The seer's footsteps made no sound, only the faint rustle of his robe betrayed his presence. "You look like a ghost, my king," he said gently. Adrian didn't look up. "You warned me this would happen." The old man nodded. "I did, but warnings are only as strong as the will that hears them." He stepped closer, studying the sleeping healer. His ancient eyes softened with something like pity. "The cloth was never just a seal. It is a vessel, a sacred cage meant to hold the power of love itself. Her spirit is bound within it. That is why she sleeps. The curse feeds on the Alpha's doubt. The more you question your love for her, the deeper she will fall." Adrian turned sharply, golden eyes blazing. "Then tell me how to break it." Kyle sighed, his voice heavy with years. "Breaking the curse means facing what she feared most, the truth that binds you both. But truth has a price, my king, and not all lovers survive it." He turned toward the door, pausing only once. "The goddess does not punish love. She tests it." Then he was gone, leaving only the scent of incense and a silence too heavy to bear. Evening fell slowly over the kingdom. Outside, the torches along the palace walls flickered to life, their flames swaying like anxious hearts. The night smelled of storm, damp earth, lightning, and destiny. Inside, Adrian sat beside Serena's bed once more. The courtiers had grown restless. Some whispered that the king had lost his reason. Others claimed the healer was a witch who had bewitched him. Adrian didn't care. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "If love is what the goddess demands," he murmured, "then love is what I'll give her, even if it destroys me." He stood, every muscle tight with resolve. Slowly, he walked toward the table where the cloth lay waiting. The air grew heavier as he approached, humming faintly with power. He reached out a hand, fingers trembling, and lifted the edge of the fabric. It was lighter than he expected, soft as memory, fragile as breath. But the instant his skin brushed it, the mark on Serena's shoulder flared. Light spilled through the room in waves of gold and silver. Her lips parted in a gasp, though her eyes remained closed. "Serena," he whispered, hope and terror colliding in his voice. The air thickened until it felt alive, swirling around him like mist. He could smell her scent, jasmine and rain, even though she did not stir. Then, faint and fragile, he heard her voice inside his mind. "Don't take it off." He froze. His heart pounded. Every instinct screamed for restraint, but his desperation burned hotter than reason. "I can't lose you," he whispered, tears filling his eyes. "Not again. Not like this." And so, driven by love stronger than fear, the Alpha King lifted the cloth. Light erupted, pure and violent. It filled the chamber, bursting through windows, flooding corridors, blinding every guard who stood watch nearby. Wind roared like a storm unleashed from the heavens. The doors blew open. Curtains snapped like banners in battle. And in the center of it all stood Adrian, bathed in golden fire, holding the woman he loved as the curse of the goddess came undone. When the light began to fade, he staggered back, his breath ragged. There, upon Serena's bare skin, a mark now burned, radiant and perfect, a crescent moon entwined with flame, glowing as though carved by the goddess herself. It was not a mark of curse, but of lineage. Adrian's eyes widened, his voice broke into a whisper. She bears the mark of my line. The symbol of the royal bloodline of Elaris, passed only through those chosen by divine right. He sank to his knees beside her, realization slicing through him like a blade. "She wasn't cursed," he murmured. "She was chosen." The glow pulsed once, brilliant, then faded into a soft, silver shimmer. Adrian reached for her hand, trembling. "Serena, please, wake up." Her eyelids fluttered, her lips parting as she drew a ragged breath. For an instant he saw her eyes, those familiar, gentle eyes, and hope surged through him. Then her body convulsed. The mark on her skin flared violently. Her eyes snapped open, irises burning silver under the moonlight that poured through the shattered windows. Adrian's breath caught. "Serena." But the voice that came from her lips was not entirely hers. It was layered, soft and divine, echoing with the cadence of the moon goddess herself. "The Alpha has broken the seal. The cloth is no longer the vessel. Now, the hearts shall decide who remains." Wind howled through the chamber, extinguishing every candle. Adrian's cloak whipped behind him as the air filled with shimmering dust like falling stars. Serena's body arched, caught between mortal pain and divine power. "Adrian!" she gasped, her voice both pleading and distant. He rushed to her, grasping her face in his hands. "I'm here. Hold on to me." Her tears turned silver as they fell. "You shouldn't have lifted it." "I had to," he said fiercely. "You would have died." Her voice cracked, broken between sobs and prophecy. "And now you may die because you love me." The mark burned brighter, casting shadows across the walls like dancing wolves. The sound of 1,000 heartbeats filled the air, as if the whole kingdom was breathing through them. Adrian held her tighter. "If love is the curse, then let it fall on me alone." She tried to speak, but her voice dissolved into light. The glow swallowed her whole, wrapping her in silver fire. When it finally dimmed, she collapsed once more, unconscious. But this time, the mark on her chest had changed. It no longer glowed red or gold. It was silver now, pulsing faintly. Alive. Adrian knelt beside her, trembling, tears staining his cheeks. He pressed his forehead to her hand, whispering, "You were never meant to suffer for my weakness." Outside, thunder rolled again, distant and mournful. The storm passed over the palace like a sigh from the heavens. High above, beyond the veil of cloud, the moon goddess watched. Her eyes shimmered with sorrow. "The Alpha has lifted the veil of fate," she murmured. "The cloth has chosen, and love has defied command. Now the debt must be paid." Below in the mortal world, the Alpha King held the sleeping woman who bore the mark of his blood and his curse. The night was still at last, but every shadow in the palace seemed to whisper the same truth. The bond between them was no longer of choice or chance. It was destiny, sealed in blood, moonlight, and the price of forbidden love. The first sound was not a scream, but a heartbeat, a deep, thunder-like pulse that shook the chamber's walls. Light flared from Serena's body, flooding the air with silver and gold until even the shadows trembled. Every candle bent in the sudden gust. The curtains snapped as if the night itself had been startled awake. Adrian threw an arm across his face, blinded by the radiance. His wolf half growled in awe, his human half whispered her name. When the brilliance at last began to fade, he lowered his hand, and the breath left his chest. Serena stood at the center of the storm she had made. Barefoot, trembling, her hair lifting in the static air, she looked less like a woman reborn than a spirit remembered. Moonlight shimmered along her skin. The faint symbol on her shoulder glowed like liquid fire beneath translucent flesh. For a heartbeat, she seemed lost between two worlds. "Serena." Adrian's voice cracked. "You're awake." Her eyes, those soft, human eyes he had memorized, now burned silver, reflecting the light of the moon that spilled through the shattered window. She glanced down at her shaking hands, confusion passing over her face before recognition hit. Her gaze lifted slowly to him. "You lifted it." He swallowed hard, guilt thick in his throat. "I had to. You were fading before my eyes. I couldn't." She flinched as though the words were arrows. "You couldn't lose me," she finished for him. "But I begged you not to." Her voice was fragile, a whisper woven with sorrow and the echo of the goddess's warning. She turned away, arms wrapping around herself as though trying to contain the light bleeding from within. The mark on her shoulder pulsed once, twice, then steadied, its rhythm matching his heartbeat. Adrian took a hesitant step closer. "You were dying. I thought love could save you." She faced him again, eyes shimmering with tears that refused to fall. "Love, Adrian, is what bound me to this curse. It was never meant to free me." Her words fell like frost between them. He wanted to argue, to tell her that love was strength that nothing born of the heart could destroy. But something in her expression stopped him. It was the look of someone who had carried truth too heavy for speech. "Then tell me what it means," he said softly. "Tell me the truth you've been protecting." She closed her eyes, drawing a breath that sounded older than time itself. When she spoke, her voice carried the cadence of an ancient story, half memory, half prophecy. "I am not only an Omega healer," she said. "I am the daughter of the moon's first vessel, born from a line of women who carried the goddess's sorrow. When men turned cruel, when power drowned compassion, she wove her tears into cloth and sealed them with the blood of the first love that betrayed her. That cloth became our burden and our protection. One daughter each generation bears it, to keep the balance between love and death. I was chosen. And when an alpha loves the vessel," her voice faltered, "the seal awakens." Adrian felt the floor tilt beneath him. "You mean this was always meant to happen?" She nodded faintly. "The moment we met, Every heartbeat since then was part of the binding. He stepped nearer, unwilling to believe destiny could be so cruel. Then let it take me. Whatever the curse demands, I'll pay it. Tears finally broke free, sliding down her cheeks like molten silver. You don't understand, she whispered. The cloth doesn't choose who dies. It chooses who loves more. The sentence carved through him, leaving silence in its wake. Outside, the wind rose, carrying with it the mournful cry of a wolf somewhere in the forest. He reached out, catching her trembling hand in both of his. Then it will take me, he said, voice rough but steady. Because no heart could ever love as much as mine does now. For a moment she stared at him, eyes wide with pain and awe, but the mark on her shoulder began to blaze, casting white fire across the walls. Her body shuddered. She gasped, clutching her chest as if the light itself were tearing her apart. Serena! Adrian pulled her against him, feeling her heart hammer violently beneath his palm. What's happening? Her voice came in broken breaths. It's too late. The cloth was never meant to be lifted. The balance is breaking. He gathered her closer, desperate. Then I'll share it. Whatever comes, we face it together. She struggled to breathe, her fingers finding his face, tracing the outline of the man she had once saved. Adrian, she whispered, her touch shaking. Don't blame yourself. The goddess chose this path the moment our eyes met. He pressed his forehead to hers, refusing to let go. Then let her see what love truly looks like. The air erupted around them. A roar of wind burst from the chamber, shattering glass, ripping through banners, extinguishing every flame. White and red light spiraled together, two souls entwined, refusing to separate. The palace shook. The night outside burned crimson as the blood moon rose again, answering their vow. Then came the stillness. A silence so deep that even the stars seemed to hold their breath. One heartbeat. Only one. When the light receded, Adrian found himself kneeling on the cold marble floor. In his arms, Serena lay still, her expression peaceful, almost smiling. The mark on her shoulder was gone, its glow absorbed into the faint shimmer that lingered over her skin. Beside her lay the cloth, folded neatly, its threads dull, its magic spent. Adrian's vision blurred. He pressed his forehead to hers, whispering words meant only for her spirit. You kept your promise, even when I failed to keep mine. A single tear slid from his cheek onto hers, glistening like a drop of moonlight. The breeze through the shattered window carried a voice, soft and distant, a whisper that seemed to rise from everywhere and nowhere at once. Please, don't take the cloth off. And then she was gone. The Alpha King held her close until dawn. When the first rays of sunlight crept into the room, they touched the fallen cloth, and for a fleeting instant, it shimmered again, just enough to cast a pale reflection on the king's tear-streaked face. Outside, the wolves of Elaris howled in unison, their mournful voices echoing through the mountains. Within the palace, the courtiers who dared to listen said that the sound was not grief but reverence, an anthem to the love that defied the moon goddess herself. Adrian bowed his head, whispering into the silence, "Let the world remember her not as cursed, but as my salvation." And somewhere far beyond the clouds, the moon goddess looked down with sorrow and pride, for even she could not unmake what had been born that night, a love strong enough to touch eternity. The night after Serena's death stretched endlessly, thick with grief. No torch dared burn in the palace halls. The flames that had once danced proudly in golden sconces now lay cold and defeated. Even the wolves that patrolled the castle walls lowered their heads and howled only once, a long, mournful sound that faded into the stillness like a prayer swallowed by wind. The kingdom of Elaris slept uneasily, as though afraid to breathe in the shadow of its sorrow. In the heart of the shattered chamber, where moonlight pooled through broken glass, the Alpha King sat motionless upon the marble floor. The scent of herbs and blood still lingered, mingling with the faint sweetness of her hair. Serena lay in his arms, wrapped in the same cloth that had sealed their fate. Its threads, once shimmering with divine light, were dull now, quiet, lifeless. But when he pressed her close, he swore he could still feel her warmth, faint and fading, as though love itself refused to let go. Hours became shadows. Shadows became silence. He did not move. He did not speak. He simply held her, waiting for the goddess who never came. When the first pale edge of dawn brushed the broken windows, Adrian finally lifted his gaze. His voice cracked against the emptiness. "If this is the goddess's justice," he whispered, "then let her take my crown, my name, my throne. But leave me her smile. Just leave me that." No answer came from the heavens. No wind stirred, and yet something flickered beneath the cloth. A faint, rhythmic glow, soft as a heartbeat. He blinked, unable to trust his own weary eyes. "Serena," he breathed. But it was not her body that stirred. It was his own. Beneath his torn robes, above his heart, a silver light pulsed, steady, quiet, alive. He tore the fabric open and saw it, the crescent mark that had once burned upon her shoulder, now etched upon his chest. Her power had passed to him. Her love had not died. It had simply moved its home. Adrian fell to his knees beside her, his tears darkening the cloth she had left behind. Now he understood the seer's warning. Only one heart would survive the binding, and it was hers, beating inside him. He lifted the folded cloth to his lips and pressed a trembling kiss against it. "You kept your promise, my love," he whispered. "You saved me, even when I never deserved saving." Days melted into weeks. Outside, life went on, but the palace had changed. The once proud fortress of Elaris seemed gentler now. Ivy climbed its outer walls, and the echoes of laughter slowly returned to its courtyards. And the king, once feared as the wolf of iron, was different too. He no longer ruled with the voice of command but with the heart of remembrance. In council his tone softened. His decrees favored mercy over might. When courtiers whispered of rebellion, he answered not with execution, but with patience. When Omegas trembled before him expecting cruelty, he rose from his throne and lifted their chins gently. "Kindness," he told them, repeating Serena's words, "is not weakness. It is strength the cruel will never understand." Word spread. The king who had once shed blood now healed wounds. The people began to call him the moon-touched king, a ruler changed by love rather than power. He banned the old law that divided ranks of blood. He opened the healer's ward to all who suffered. And when the first orphaned pup came to the palace gates, he carried the child in his own arms. Every decree he made carried her voice within it, as though Serena herself spoke through him still. Each full moon, the king walked alone to the garden where she had once tended herbs in silence. The little patch she'd cultivated still bloomed wild, untouched by time. Lavender brushed his knees as he knelt beside the old altar stone. Upon it, he placed the folded cloth. He stayed there until dawn, speaking to her as though she sat across from him. He told her of the people, of the peace returning to Elaris, of the nights he dreamed of her laughter. Sometimes the breeze stirred the leaves just enough to make him think she was answering. Sometimes, a faint silver light rippled across the cloth, as if her spirit smiled from beyond. On quiet nights, when the world held its breath, he could almost feel her fingers graze his cheek. The same gentle touch that once brought him back from rage. Those fleeting moments were enough. 1 year passed. The blood moon rose again, crimson and full, bathing the land in its unholy light. But this time, the kingdom did not fear it. They gathered in the courtyards, lighting candles not for sacrifice but for remembrance. Adrian stood alone in the garden, the folded cloth resting on the altar. The air shimmered faintly around him, carrying the scent of rain and lavender. He felt the mark over his heart begin to glow, soft, pulsing, alive once more. He closed his eyes, smiling through the ache. "If you're still watching, Serena," he whispered, "then know this. I kept my promise too." The wind rose gently, swirling around him like an embrace. The cloth trembled on the altar, then lifted, slowly, weightlessly, unfolding like a banner made of light. From the reflection in the pond, he saw them, two silver wolves running side by side across the water's mirrored surface. Their bodies shimmered like moonlight, their movements in perfect harmony. He recognized her in the way one turned its head toward him, eyes bright and kind. Adrian's heart filled with peace. He looked up at the blood-red moon, its reflection mingling with the silver glow below. "Together, then," he whispered. He took one step forward, then another, walking toward the light as if returning home. The glow embraced him, wrapping around his body until his form dissolved into brilliance. The air grew still, the night fell silent once more, and when the light faded, only the folded cloth remained, lying softly upon the altar stone, gleaming faintly beneath the moon. When dawn broke, the gardeners found the altar surrounded by blooming moonflowers, white, luminous, alive though none had planted them. At the center, the cloth rested, untouched by dust or time. No one dared move it. From that day onward, the people of Elaris told the story of the moon-touched king and the healer who defied fate. They said the goddess wept for them both, but blessed their union in the stars. And on nights when the blood moon rose again, two wolves could still be seen racing through the forest mist, one crowned with light, the other trailing silver fire. Their legend endured, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a hymn of love's victory over destiny. And beneath the eternal moon, the cloth shimmered once more, whispering into the wind the words that began it all. "Please, don't take the cloth off." Many seasons passed. The once golden towers of Elaris dimmed beneath the slow brush of time. Ivy crept over their walls, and the songs of court musicians faded into memory. Kings rose, ruled, and were forgotten. Queens sat upon thrones of marble, and watched the years turn like pages in a book that never ended. But through every changing age, one story refused to fade. The tale of the moon-touched king and the healer who taught him to love lived on in every whisper of wind that crossed the palace gardens. It was told beside fireplaces when winter howled, and repeated under starlit skies by lovers who feared the world would not understand their hearts. In the quiet corners of the royal archives, scholars still argued about whether it had truly happened. Yet when the full moon shone, even the most skeptical among them found their thoughts drifting toward the garden on the palace's eastern edge, the place where the goddess's light always seemed a little brighter. They said that on certain nights when the moon was whole and white, a silver radiance would spill across that garden like water. The air would fill with the scent of lavender and sage, herbs that had not grown anywhere else in the kingdom for generations. Children who woke during those hours claimed they heard laughter carried on the wind, soft, warm, and filled with the joy of reunion. The maids who tended the early flowers swore they felt a gentle hand guiding theirs as they worked, showing them where to prune, where to let life grow freely. And if you stood very still, if you dared to listen past the beating of your own heart, you could hear it too. A woman's voice, tender and eternal, whispering through the moonlight. "Please, don't take the cloth off." Centuries rolled by. Dynasties changed. The language of the people evolved, but the legend of the healer and her king endured. It was during the reign of Queen Liara, many generations later, that the royal historians uncovered something astonishing. Deep beneath the roots of an ancient tree in the healer's garden, they found a stone altar. Resting atop it was a folded piece of fabric, the cloth. Its surface was unmarked by time. No thread had frayed, no color had faded. When they lifted it into the moonlight, it shimmered faintly, alive with a warmth no mortal hand could explain. It seemed to hum, a sound like the echo of a heartbeat, or perhaps two, perfectly in rhythm. The queen, moved by curiosity and reverence, summoned the oldest seer still living in the realm. The man's eyes were clouded with age, yet when he gazed upon the relic, tears welled within them. "What does it mean?" she asked quietly. "Why does it still live?" The seer's smile trembled as he bowed his head. "It means," he said, "that love never dies. It only changes shape until it finds its way home." That night, Queen Layara stood upon her balcony, the cloth resting on the table beside her. The moon hung enormous above the forest and mist rolled softly across the fields below. And there, in the mirror of a moonlit pond, she saw them. Two wolves, silver as starlight, ran side by side along the forest's edge. One was crowned in radiant light, the other glowed with the softer hue of the moon. Their paws left trails of luminescence across the grass, footprints that shimmered for a few heartbeats before fading into air. Liara watched in silence, her heart full of awe. As the wolves vanished into the mist, she whispered a prayer to the moon goddess, not of fear, but of gratitude. In the years that followed, the story spread beyond the palace walls. Travelers carried it across oceans. Bards wove it into songs that echoed through marketplaces and across the open plains. To some it was a tale of divine punishment. To others, a hymn to devotion stronger than death. But for those who believed, truly believed, it was a promise that every act of kindness, every unselfish love, leaves a light behind that never dims. Children grew up hearing about Serena the healer and Adrian, the moon-touched king. Lovers carved their names into tree bark beneath the full moon, vowing to find one another again in the next life. And on the anniversary of the blood moon, candles were lit in every window of Elaris, so that no one who loved would have to walk in darkness. Some say the cloth still rests upon the garden altar, guarded by the goddess herself. Others say it was lifted to the heavens, woven into the fabric of the night sky. Its silver threads now part of the constellation the people call the Lovers. Yet all who know the legend agree on one truth. The cloth was never a curse. It was a gift, proof that love, even forbidden, can shape the fate of kings and outlast the cruelty of time. If you walk the palace gardens on a moonlit night, you might see it for yourself. The moonflowers bloom brighter there. The air is sweeter. And if you listen closely, you may hear the faint rustle of fabric and the echo of a voice soft as the wind saying, "Love is not meant to be hidden. It is meant to endure." And so the story of Serena and Adrian passed from memory into legend, from legend into eternity. It became a part of the world itself, a quiet heartbeat in the rhythm of the stars, a reminder that even in the face of fate, love remains the most powerful magic of all.